the whole story around the Wall Street Journal, let me just say this in the beginning. I could have only hoped and dreamed to be known in national media. And I did a lot of good work over a decade and a half. And, you know, it's really hard to get the attention of national media. And most of the time when you see people like, hey, I'm on the cover of Forbes or was on TV or whatever, you know, most of those spots are paid sponsorships. A lot of people don't know that, but a lot of people pay to get media exposure. And so it had costed me a fortune to get like featured in the Wall Street Journal, like as a sponsored, you know, article. And unfortunately, the way they learned about me is one of my former mentees went out and did a really big deal and lost a bunch of money. And they found out that I was his former real estate mentor. And they called me last year in 2023, and they're like, hey, we're doing this story on one of your former students, and do you want to comment on it? And I was freaking out. Like, I had sleepless nights. I'm thinking, oh, my God, like, this is going to be terrible. And, you know, and so we engaged with them. Like, I hired a PR team, and we engaged with them. And they were committed to being fair and balanced. And so we gave them a lot of information about what we do with our mentees and what we don't do and the nature of our relationship and all that type of stuff. So, you know, they kept the article more focused on him and basically just mentioned that I was his real estate coach, and they didn't really go down the rabbit hole about me. But then, you know, there was like an article that came out about me and the real deal that wasn't very flattering about me. And let me just say I had a completely different experience with Real Deal journalists than the Wall Street Journal. And then to make things worse, the Journal called me in March of this year of 2024, and they were like, Brad, look, we've done our research, and we believe that you, more than anybody else, has had an impact in helping, like, you know, they said, like, the average person get into the syndication business. So we're going to do a story on the syndication business and your role on popularizing it. And I was just terrified, honestly. And I'm just thinking, oh, my God, this is going to be a hit piece, and this is going to be terrible, because they have this negative narrative about me because of, like, that former student of mine where, you know, that he lost a bunch of money. And so that would be like, that's ridiculous, by the way. That would be like saying, like, hey, you know, you went to Harvard, and then, you know, this was a Harvard grad, and this Harvard grad went out and lost a bunch of money, so somehow Harvard's responsible. Like, isn't that ridiculous, right? So bottom line is they start doing this story about me, and I engaged with them. And I flew up to New York, and they said I was going to have a 1-hour interview. I was there for 4 hours. And
they took you, like, you offered to come in, because they usually don't. So
well, let me just say it was a really positive experience.
That's
and
nice.
I learned that, like, these journalists are really good people, the two that I work with at the Journal, and they're doing their job. You know, they're trying to create an article that is interesting. And they told me they'd be fair and balanced. And some people told me, like, don't trust them, you know, don't trust the media. And other people told me, engage with them and go all in. So that's what I did. Because, look, I believe that creation is a process. And so they interviewed me, and I told them my story. And then they said, Brad, we're really glad you came up here. And we see a completely different side of you and your company and how you're changing people's lives. And they said, hey, do you have anybody that, any of your successful students that could talk to us? And I'm thinking, man, I have hundreds of successful students. And then I was afraid, because I'm like, is anyone really going to want to go on record talking to the national media? And honestly, I was so afraid. So I made a short list of like 20 or 30 students that I've massively helped. And I start calling them one at a time, and I'm like, hey, you know, I'm in this position where I'd love for you to talk to the Wall Street Journal about your success as a multifamily investor and syndicator and your success in my program, and would you mind talking to the Journal? And I'm thinking they're going to say no, and the first person says yes. And then I call the next person, and they say yes. Then I call the next person, and they say yes. Well, put it this way, like, everybody I talked to said yes. And honestly, I went home. I was home that day, and I just broke down in tears. Because, you know, for somebody to go and get on national media without having experience could be risky, you know, and it could be nerve-wracking. But, like, and then I went to some industry experts, you know, like lenders and tax professionals and brokers, and I asked them if they would speak to the Journal, and they all said yes. And so at the end of the day, this article came out on July 16th. And I'll never forget, it was 11:30 at night. And I get a text from one of my good friends. And you know, people know him, and I don't want to mention his name, but he actually spoke to the Journal. And the digital version came out, and he texted me and goes, Brad, the article is out, and it's actually pretty good. And I jumped off the couch, and I went and Googled Brad Sumrok, Wall Street Journal.
Because they don't give you a revision for you to see before it comes out, right? It's like whatever comes out is already out.
And I read it, and the title was America's Apartment King.
Let's go.
I was like, so look, like one of my friends gave me the nickname Apartment King, and the Wall Street Journal, the digital title of that article was something along the lines of America's Apartment King, and I would say the article was 80% positive, and you were in it, and you and several other students that were interviewed, you were in it, and the successes that you had were mentioned in there. And honestly, I was really happy with the journalists. They did what they said they were going to do. They were fair. They were balanced. The article wasn't all positive. It was definitely not a sponsored article. But it came out to be more positive than negative. And I'm really, really proud of the article, and I'm proud of the work they did at the Journal. And I had an amazing experience.
Absolutely.
So I'd like to invite your readers, if you in the show Cliff Notes, if you put the link in there, let everybody read it. And I'd love to know, if you're listening to the show and you read the article, I'd love to know what you think.
Waking up to success, now we're getting it started. This is the real grind. Everything you've been wanting, building an empire, no question. Talking about real estate, investing, making the millions, no stopping. While we sip on gourmet coffee, the real grind. This is the real grind. Let's go.